Hi friends, it's Valerie. Welcome back to this week's What's for Dinner. If you are new here, I would love if you would hit that subscribe button and join my YouTube family. Today I've got 3 inspirational meals for you, and I hope that you enjoy them as much as we did. My favorite for the week is going to be the Instant Pot pork tenderloin that had a cranberry and butter sauce. It was super good. But all 3 meals were ones that I enjoyed, so I hope that you like them, and if you could leave a comment or a like down below, I'd really appreciate that. It does help my channel. Let's just get started. The first thing I'm going to be making today is an Instant Pot pork tenderloin with a cranberry butter sauce. I also wanted to make some easy Instant Pot mashed potatoes, and I'm going to be halving a recipe that I have in the description box down below. I've just cleaned up a pound of potatoes and I placed them in Instant Pot with some water, about 3/4 cup to a cup of water, and I'm just cooking those for 20 minutes on high pressure. And then you're going to go ahead and get started for your pork tenderloin. You're going to need 1 pound of a pork tenderloin. I went ahead and cleaned up by removing that silvery skin. Now you're going to need 1 cup of dried cranberries. We're going to basically make what's going to top your pork tenderloin or coat your tenderloin. And also going to need 1 small red onion roughly chopped. I kind of put it in big pieces, and then 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And you will also need 1 stick of unsalted butter. And it was obviously not going to work out for me in this very small food processor that I thought I could make it happen with, so I had to move that to my bigger food processor, and I just blended that up. I didn't do that on camera. It was much harder using that one. But you're going to go ahead and cut your pork tenderloin in half, and then you're just going to cover it with all that cranberry and butter mixture, just pressing it on there. I focused on the top and sides as much as I could, and the bottom, the recipe didn't really specify too much about if you're covering this all over, so I did put some on the bottom, but I didn't put too much, knowing that some of it is going to fall off while in the Instant Pot. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that my top and sides looked the best that they could. I'm going to be using my 6-quart Instant Pot today, and I'm going to put the insert into the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and add in 1 cup of chicken broth to the bottom, as well as 1 tablespoon of balsamic vinegar. And then you're just going to carefully place that pork tenderloin onto the trivet. I just kind of used this like pastry cutting tool here. It was very wide. I figured that would help me kind of like scoop it up in one shot. Some of it did fall off a little bit. I just kind of pressed it back on. So apparently I read the recipe wrong in the first place, and it said to put it for 12 minutes. I did 15 minutes. It did say 15 minutes if it was frozen, 15 to 20 minutes, but yeah, I did 15 minutes and it worked out fine, and you do a quick release on that. And while that was cooking, I got back to my mashed potatoes, and I'm just kind of using this masher to gently go ahead and break those potatoes up. In case you're wondering, I did drain the water that we used to cook the potatoes in the first place before mashing them, and now I'm adding in 4 tablespoons of butter. It says at room temperature, but I forgot to pull my butter out, so I put it in there and I kind of mashed it so it can begin to melt. And then I'm adding in 1 cup of half and half. I did have that at room temperature, so I went ahead and added that. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in a teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt and some pepper to taste. And I'm just gonna mash that up to my liking, making them nice and smooth and creamy. And now that the pork is done, I went ahead and removed it from the pot, and I'm just gonna go ahead and slice that up into some thinner slices. And it's not looking too pretty here, like the top of the cranberry is just falling off. I'm trying my best to like preserve it, keep it on there looking pretty. And then once you cut that up, you're supposed to place it back in the pot in the liquid. This is going to help the tenderloin just like re-suck up all those juices and flavor. And I was trying to be all nice about it, but I was like, just so I can keep that cranberry intact, but it wasn't mattering what I did. So then I just dumped it all in there, let it soak for a few minutes while the pork kind of rests a bit. And this was it all done. I served it with those mashed potatoes and some green beans. This was really good. I liked this a lot. I don't have pork tenderloin too much, but definitely a good way to have it. Really loved that cranberry sauce. We were left with a lot of that cranberry butter sauce, so I definitely feel like I could half that in the future or make another pork to go with it. Like if you had an 8-quart pot, you could definitely do 2 pounds of pork for that. This next meal is a super simple hamburger soup. I'm starting off with my Dutch oven over medium to medium high heat, and I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and I went ahead and diced up half of a medium-sized onion, and I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there and stir that around and let it saute for a few minutes until the onions begin to soften. Next, I'm adding in 1 pound of ground beef, and I'm just using my meat chopping tool to go ahead and break that up, and then I'm going to go ahead and let that brown. I did forget to add my garlic at this point, but I do add it in here after I drain the grease out of the meat. Then I added in about a tablespoon of that garlic and gave it a stir. And now I'm adding in 2 cups of beef broth that I'm just mixing some water and better than bouillon, the beef better than bouillon, and I'm adding that in. And then it calls for some condensed tomato soup, 10 ounces of that. So mine's like 10 point something ounces, so I just put the whole can in there. And I'm also adding in 1 whole can of water, and the recipe calls for 1 cup of small pasta. I'm using these small shells, and I'm actually using about 2 cups worth. I was just shy of having 2 cups, and just go ahead and stir that in. You're going to bring that to a boil, and then you'll turn your heat down to a simmer, like a medium low, and then add in 1 can of corn or other vegetables that you prefer, and let that go ahead and just simmer for about 6 to 8 minutes. I think I did around 10 minutes worth. And then I took out some of that broth because I tasted it and it needed something. So I took a little bit of the hot broth out, and to it I mixed in 1 bouillon cube, a chicken bouillon cube, and 1 packet of the Sazon Goya. It adds the tomato flavor with some nice spices. I just felt like this needed something more. So if you have those things, I would definitely recommend adding them to add more flavor. If you don't, you can also substitute, I would say, a can of tomato sauce with just some more seasoning, some salt, or maybe even more beef broth. Because this way it was very, very delicious, and I just had some garlic toast with that. This last meal is Instant Pot shredded barbecue chicken. So to start, you'll need 2 tablespoons of Italian dressing. I actually don't have any, so I'm just combining something they said in the notes, which was to substitute 1.5 tablespoons of oil with a 1/2 tablespoon of vinegar and a small pinch of Italian seasoning, and just combine that. So that's what I'm doing there. And then to my Instant Pot, you're going to need 1.25 pounds of chicken. I just have 1 large chicken breast here. Mine is frozen, and I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of water. The recipe doesn't call for any, but I was afraid to get a burn notice, so I think I just added like a 1/4 cup of water. And then on top of that, I just added that Italian dressing that I just made. And then you're gonna need 3/4 cup of barbecue sauce. I'm using this honey barbecue sauce, and I was very close to not having enough here. I was just using up the last of the bottle, and I had about the full 3/4 cups worth. And the recipe doesn't call for this, but I'm going to add in a tablespoon of liquid smoke just to give that really smokehouse flavored barbecue taste that I'm going for with this. And then just go ahead and place the lid on your Instant Pot. Make sure it's in the sealing position, and I'm cooking that on high pressure. The recipe calls for 10 minutes. I'm adding an additional 5 minutes because I'm using a larger chicken breast, and it is also frozen. I just want to make sure that's typically the time I cook that at, 15 minutes. And it says to do a quick release, but I let that naturally release for about 10 minutes just because I find that chicken is drier that way when you quick release. It just works for me. You do what works for you. I'm also just making up these steak fries, just quick idea for a side. I just sprinkled on some seasoning salt and air fried those, and also I'm making up one of these just coleslaw kits really quick. There was the natural release time on there. I let it go an extra minute while I was grabbing the camera on accident, but that was still fine. And I just pulled that chicken out, and while I'm shredding this chicken up, I put the Instant Pot on the saute function. I'll show you what that does in a minute here, but just shred that all up, whatever method works for you with your hand mixer or forks, and you'll see that sauce there all bubbly. It's thickening up because of that little bit of water I added. Did probably make it a little bit thinner, plus I'm using frozen chicken breast, so it released some water, so that just thickened that back up. And by the time my chicken was done being shredded, and then I added that shredded chicken into the sauce and just mixed it all together, got it all nice and coated, and it was perfectly way better than if I would have just added it in without thickening that sauce. It would have been way too runny. And I'm just going to be having this on some sandwich bread. I'm using this nut and grain bread. I really like this bread. I just didn't have any buns either, so I thought this would be a decent substitution, and it was. Only thing I would do if I had more time that day is I would have toasted that, like put a little bit of butter and toasted it up. That would have gave that extra little crunch I would have liked, but it was very delicious, and I served that with those fries. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that little bell so you don't miss out on any future What's for Dinner videos, and I hope you all are having an amazing week.